cover the areas that I'm not doing so well. Okay, so last month, we spoke about the whole book, the structure. There are 3 chapters, but I think it's very important to understand the context, and that's what we'll be doing today too. So understanding the virtues, the 3 chapters, the virtues, preaching, and 10 merits, and we briefly understand what each chapter is supposed to mean. And so that's what we talked about last time. But this time we're coming into the very first section. Now there are 11 sections in the first chapter, virtues, and we're only coming on to the first section this time, which is tens of thousands came before the Buddha. And so we're going to dive into this area. We're going to look into it, and we're going to try to figure out what are the senses, what are the logic behind Buddha explaining all these things. Or maybe the Buddha hadn't said anything, but it was trying to explain what the contents were. So this was for this month. This is the progress in terms of the sutra itself in Chinese, and this is all the English. Okay, so the entire English for all the parts that we'll be covering today. Now, I don't mean you to have to read through it. You probably have it in your books, and that's fine. But what I've done is I like to look at the big picture, which is the whole book, the 3 chapters, and then look into what we're going to cover today. So very quickly, there are going to be parts that we can parse. We can parse these whole big parts of the paragraph into different parts. First, we have the thus have I heard, and there are 3 subparts in the book. They're basically into Ananda's 4 questions, compiling the sutras in the Saptaparni cave, and the 3 meanings of thus have I heard. Now, these are the 3 subsections in the book. So that means just from thus have I heard, the 4 words that we have seen in the very first part of the sutra, there are already 3 subsections in the book explaining this. The second part is the location and the time. So in the book, there are 2 subsections covering this following part. The time at one time, and then the location, Rajagurha, and also the Gurha Kuta. So the origin of the city of the house of kings and the spiritual center suitable for spreading the Dharma. That's the second part, and there are 2 subsections under this. Now, the next big part is a huge entourage of all the people that are coming along to listen to the Buddha's teaching. And there are 3 subsections, the 3 meanings of bhikshus, and the pure practice of heavenly beings, and all beings came to hear the Dharma. And then the last part is about what they did. All of them came forward to be in front of the Buddha, and then what did they do? That's the last part, and it's encouraging everyone to hear the Dharma and 3 types of offering from the Buddha's disciples: wealth, respect, and conduct. So there are 4 different parts, and we're going to cover them one at a time, and so that we understand that this time, the entire sutra content that we're going to be covering, it can be split into 4 parts. So 4 parts: the beginning, which includes the 4 questions, Ananda's 4 questions, and the 3 meanings of the thus have I heard. Then the next part is the location and the time, and it's talking about the spiritual center. The third part are all the people or all the beings that came to hear the Dharma. That's the third part. And the fourth part is what did they do and why? Action. So we're going to begin with the beginning. So beginning, Ananda's 4 questions. So the 4 questions were, how will we be able to prove that these teachings belong to the Dharma that the Buddha taught? So the very specific timing and the context is that there are 4 questions that Ananda asked the Buddha when understanding and knowing, upon knowing that the Buddha is about to depart from this world, is about to leave this world, dying, if you will. So Ananda, the final breath of the Buddha, had to answer these 4 questions. So the 4 questions were, how will we be able to prove that all the things that we're about to say actually are what the Buddha taught? The second question was, after the Buddha departs from the world, whom shall we call our teacher? Who is going to be the successor? Who is going to be our next teacher? Who is going to guide us? The third question is, if there are any unruly bhikshus who do not accept the teachings, how should we discipline them? And the fourth question is, once the Buddha departs from the world, with whom or in what shall we take refuge? Now, these are the four questions. And the reason why I want to bring this up is that these four questions actually respond to something that's very important. These four questions respond to, first, authenticity. The first question is, how will we know that this is truly what the Buddha said? Authenticity of the Dharma is very important. We do not want to be learning something that we thought was from the Buddha, when in fact it's not. So authenticity is very important because Buddha is no longer with us. How could anybody prove that this is from the Buddha himself? Even in the year that was 2,500 years ago, how would anybody be able to prove that Buddha actually said this? So authenticity is very important. So we got to ask these questions when the Buddha is still with us. Ask the Buddha, how can I authenticate that this is the teaching from the Buddha, from you? How can we do that? So that's very important. Next, when the Buddha departs, whom shall we call our teacher? That's called continuity. How do you continue this? We're all still learning. We're still students, but we lost our teacher. So how do we continue learning when there is no teacher? Therefore, we need a teacher. How do you continue this teaching? How do you continue the learning? We're still students. It's not the passing of the teacher, then all of a sudden, all the students become teachers. It doesn't happen. So who is going to be our next teacher? The third one is, if there are any people that would not obey or would not follow the teachings or would not accept the teachings, what will we do? How should we discipline them? Adaptability. How do you adapt to a changing world? When the people no longer accept, when people no longer try to accept or understand, what would you do? That's called adaptability. And the last part, where, with whom, or in what shall we take refuge? That's called survivability. When all else fails, what do you take refuge in? What do you rely on? What do you count on the last resort to find your way back? And I think these four questions are very important in that to keep something sustainable, to keep something to be as permanent as possible, you always require these four parts. Authenticity, making sure that this is as real, as authentic as possible, that these are all Buddha's teaching. Next, continuity. How do you continue on the teachings? How do you continue to guide? How do you continue to lead the students who have yet to become the teachers themselves? Adaptability. The environment is changing. The world is changing. What do you do to adapt to this world? What do you do to change, to accommodate all the things that are changing in the world? Lastly, survivability. There are going to be times, there are going to be occasions where there's going to be issues where you probably lost many things. How do you scratch out of that and start over? What do you rely on? What is the thing that you rely on to start over? So that's survivability. And I think that Ananda's four questions in the very early on in the book explained that in order to keep something like the teaching, the Buddha Dharma, to stay long for a long time, to stay active, to stay relevant for a long time, you need all these four things. So here is one of the story that I found, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a lot of current event stories that explain how do you keep something that, as we know, in nature, there's called the survival of the fittest. However, in the real world, this is happening. And I don't need to explain to you how some of the technology have already fall behind. If you were born in, if you were using computer in the 90s or in the 2000s, you knew that there are always these things called the DVD or CDs, right? These are all long gone, long past. They are no longer surviving or existing in our world right now. However, this is also happening. So to keep something relevant, what do you have to do? As I mentioned, authenticity, making sure that the objective and the goal remains the same and remains real. Continuity. If you're doing something good, if you're doing something right, how do you continue to do it? If you're dominating the market, if you're dominating this area, how do you keep on dominating? And then you have the, after the continuity, make sure you have adaptability. How do you change? How do you make sure that you adapt to the current world? And lastly, you have survivability. When everything else fails, what do you do? So recently, we know that ever since 2022, February 24th, the war in Ukraine and with Russia that happened. So it has become a war of attrition after just a roughly third year on this third year of this war. We've seen that there's becoming a war of attrition. Ukraine is running out of arms, it's running out of money, it's running out of ammunition, it's running out of people. So now they're resorting to different type of battle, and this is called the drones. We all know this, right? However, we're seeing that the American or the European or the Western world supplying the drones to the Ukrainians, they're also feeling that this is not working well. And this is something that should make the American military leaders very nervous, because the war is now going into a new frontier, which is using small-scale drones to do the battles. So what we've seen here in this report from the Wall Street Journal is that the made in American drone tend to be expensive, glitchy, and hard to repair. And not only that, they're fragile, unable to overcome the Russian jamming and GPS blockout technology. So we understand that some of these drones are working fine when they're in test site. However, when they're shifted to the battlefront, what happened was that they're unable to overcome the Russian jamming and GPS blockout. So what we know is that you fail to adapt. Yes, you probably have the technology advances, but you probably fail to keep that continuity. You probably also fail to adapt to the battlefront, where there are now new technology that's been deployed to disrupt all the entire electronic warfare. And not only that, you fail to adapt because there are certain legislations that's back in the US that makes you unable to adjust. So for example, the Pentagon has banned the DJI, which is one of the biggest company in China that is constructing and researching the advanced drones. And because they feel that the Chinese company is a military company and a surveillance tool for Beijing, so the US and the Pentagon says, we'll not be using any of your tools, we'll not be using any of your components. And therefore, all these drone makings where they have good breakthrough or cheap components, the US cannot use. So a ban on these Chinese components made it more expensive and harder to build the small drones that is required. So we see that it's not just an important task to continue to do what you do good in, but it's also very important to adapt to all the changing things. So let's look at authenticity. So let's go into all four parts. And what did the meaning of the "thus have I heard," the three meanings? Following Buddha's final instructions, obviously, the Ananda went to ask the Buddha, what should I do? He asked the four questions. And the very first question is authenticity. For authenticity, you use these four words, "thus have I heard," to show that these were indeed the teachings from the Buddha. The most important part is this, these two parts where we know that sees all disputes and distinguish the Buddha's teachings from outside. So the threats to authenticity of the Dharma is from both external and internal. And from internal, people will be thinking that, is this something that you spoke, that you said, or is it something that truly that was spoken by the Buddha? When anybody said, "thus have I heard," you would know that this is a sign that you would know that this is what I have heard from the Buddha, from the teacher. Therefore, you will be assured that there should be less disputes about what was said. Also, there's a distinguishing between the Buddha's teaching and also the externals. And I think that what these are, okay, so when I read this, I must admit that I don't think that this is a very good way to prove that this is authentic. As soon as you use the four words, "thus have I heard," this is a proof that this is spoken by the Buddha. I find it very hard to go along with it. However, we must think about this is 2,500 years ago, when there were no written words, when there were no paper, no pen technology to actually write down all these words. The only thing you could do is, I have heard this is what the Buddha said. So I think going back to all these years, 2,500 years, that was the best proof of authenticity already available. Think about right now, what you would have. If you make a video of yourself, if you make a video on your own, what would you do to make sure that this is yours? For example, on Dai TV, all of our videos, there will be a watermark, there will be a logo on the upper right-hand corner that allows you to know that this is Dai TV. But is it possible to replicate that? Yes, absolutely. Is it possible that you could copy that, drag the entire video down and then add some more to it and then and still make that logo there? Yes, it's very impossible. So even right now, today, the way to show that our contents are authentic isn't 100% foolproof either, isn't 100% evidence either. So even today, we have very difficult time to show the authenticity. Even today, we have very difficult time to show that indeed, Master on this year, this day, at this time, spoke these words. It's very difficult to prove that. So imagine that 2,500 years ago, this was already the best way to differentiate and to distinguish the Buddha's teachings from others. And it's already the best proof of authenticity within this context of this time. And also, one thing that it shows us is that the last thing the Buddha wants is more internal disputes. And therefore, one of the ways that thus have I heard was very important was that it seizes all the disputes. No longer should anybody be saying, no, the Buddha said this, the Buddha didn't say that. This was something that the Buddha was hoping that when everybody come together and recount what the Buddha said, that this would cease all the disputes, because the one thing that's going to crack the entire Sangha or the entire order, the monastic order of Buddhists, was from within the people itself. So very importantly, the last thing the Buddha wants is more disputes internally. Internally, you must unite. You must come together. There should be at least less dispute, the better. So take precepts as your teacher. This is the second question. With the teacher gone, with the Buddha gone, who should be our teacher? And the Buddha said, take precepts as your teacher. So why not name a successor? Why not be, oh, so-and-so, Ananda or Sariputra or anybody that is an elder in the Sangha? Why not name somebody? Because Master says we should follow the Dharma, not a person. This is a very important part in continuity. But at the same time, I think precepts as our teacher is a very important idea and concept. It is not designed. Let me just go through this. The precepts, as we know, in Tzu Chi, there are 10 precepts. And in Buddhism, there are hundreds of precepts telling you that you should not do this, you should not do this, you should not do this. But in my mind, I think precepts is not designed to limit what we can or cannot do. It should not be this way. Precepts is not something that says you cannot kill, you should not kill, or you should not lie, you should not drink alcohol. It's not to tell you that you can't do it, but it's something that you should keep in your mind. It's like a reminder from the teacher. The teacher isn't around you all the time to tell you can't do this, you can't do that. The teacher's teaching is in the school, but you use the teaching in the school in your everyday lives, just like the precepts. You learn it from the books, you learn it from the teachers, and then you take it into your daily lives. It becomes a reminder in your minds always. But it's there to protect us. It's not to tell you that you should not do this, but it's there to protect you from doing something that you should not do. Why is that? Because it protects you from accidentally forming bad affinity. Without you knowing, you step on somebody's foot. You might not know it, but you did. So that person is angry with you. And not only is he angry with you, he wants a payback. And you have no idea what happened. The next time he sees you, he's gonna just punch you in punch you in the stomach, and you didn't even know why. That's what happened. We are suffering a lot of bad affinities without even knowing when we did that. When did I anger you? When did I piss you off? Why are you so mean to me? We didn't even know why. So the 10 precepts, or all these precepts, are there to make sure that we don't accidentally or unintentionally doing something to upset other people. And that's what the precepts are there for. They're there to help to protect us. So just like a teacher, give us directions, but can't walk for us. So precepts as a teacher, as the Buddha mentioned to us, if we are lost, if we're not sure what to do, precept is a teacher to allow to give us a direction. So adaptability, unruly bhikshus, or the followers, or the monastic order of the Buddhist Sangha. So what do if they're not accepting the teachings? Master says that the answer is that the Buddha gave was use compassion to show them the error of their ways. And if that doesn't work, if they refuse to listen, even the Buddha could do nothing but ignore. So I really believe that this whole idea about this unruly bhikshus, or using compassion, I really believe that the Buddha formed this order, the Sangha, to be the least authoritative. Like you don't have an authoritative figure that says, you disobey the law, you disobey the rule, you get out. But not even the Buddha said that. The Buddha didn't even say that if you disobey, or if you not refuse to accept the errors, you get out. No, this Sangha, or this order, is the least authoritative. There isn't one authoritative figure in all the Sangha to say, you are wrong and you get out. It doesn't happen. There is so much liberty and freedom that you can learn and you can follow for all the members of the Sangha. This is what I understood. So when we read this, you get to understand that the historical background at the time, this wasn't common. This wasn't frequent. The people back then did not enjoy liberty and freedom. The people back then did not enjoy very much freedom without authoritative instructions and orders. But the Buddha said, in this order, if they refuse to accept the teachings, be compassionate. Use compassion to show them that you care, that you love. And if they agree, wonderful. If they don't, ignore. Continue on, because you can't do anything about them. They're still part of the order. It's just like, amazingly, this is truly how a family looks like. A family is that maybe your brother, your sister did something wrong to you. Maybe it's your son, maybe it's your daughter, maybe it's your parents, but you can't deny who they are. They're still your family, even if they refuse to agree with you, even if they refuse to follow what you taught them and you share them, your guidance. It doesn't matter. They're still family. So I think this is something that maybe some people think it's not very logical and it's not very common sense. But I do feel that that's how the Buddha guided and led the entire Sangha. So what binds the Sangha together isn't just the rules and the precepts. It's everyone's willingness to follow the precept. And that's the key. It's just like Tzu Chi. There isn't one person, and Master will not be that person to say, you don't follow my teaching, you get out. Master would never say that. This is not like a corporation where if you don't do well, you're fired, you're let go. It doesn't work that way. It works as a family, truly like a Dharma family, where even if you don't accept it, it's okay, as long as you feel that this is a place you still want to be, okay? So the adaptability of the individual collectively, everybody understands, everybody is willing to accept and change accordingly, and collectively, we will be able to adapt and change. And compassion is always the key to adaptation. Before you try to change people, think in their ways and think in their ideas. So survivability is to ensure the survivability of the teachings. So what to fall back on? And the Buddha said the fourfold mindfulness: mindfulness of the body, of the feelings, of the mind, of the Dharma. So what does that mean? It means that when all else fails, how do you find your way back? And the fourfold mindfulness talks about observing, consciousness. What does that mean? When we talk about being mindful of your body, it's to be observing the actions that we take, observing the feelings that we have, the sensations that we have, observing our thoughts that arises in our mind, observing the unchanged Dharma in all around us. And all these talks about contemplate and self-reflection. Survivability, or it's also a way to make sure the Dharma survives. That's why we meditate. That's why we have time to slow down, to find that inner peace, and to contemplate, and to have self-reflection. So these four questions led to these four parts: the authenticity, continuity, adaptability, and survivability. And that was all the very first portion to allow us to understand just the beginning. Thus have I heard. The first four words, Master explains these ideas to share with you how difficult it is to make something stay for more than 2,000 years. So the second part, location and the time. So we understand that provides the very important context to the historical background of the teachings, so that we know that the timing and we know the location. Because the Buddha didn't have a lot of time to explain, this is the current economic background, this is the current geopolitical background in my countries. There is no time for Buddha to explain all these things. Buddha wants to explain the teachings, not the current news. So you had to figure all these things out yourself. And how would you do that? You would do that because you know the time and you know the location. However, in the Buddhist text, in the Sutra, there's always says at one time. It's not very specific due to the uncertainty of the global standard time. And this is understandable. Even I fail to really convince myself that this is something that is, I really just think that it's an oversight. I really just think that when they call on to the assembly to recall and to construct the teachings from the memory of the Ananda, I really think that he forgot what time it was. And he didn't write it down either. He didn't remember, oh, this was a certain day, a certain year, a certain time, Buddha said this. So he just said, at one time. And Master was being very nice. Master was being very nice and explained that how would you be able to explain when across different time zones, across different, with all the different type of realms, it would be very different, right? So, for example, let me explain. Dharma was taught to all kinds of sentient beings, right? We're talking about, later we're going to be talking about heavenly beings, right? Nagas and yaksas and all these things that we never heard of. All these living sentient beings that probably look very different from human beings, but they're there and they're listening. They may have a very different type, a very different way to keep track of time, right? The exact time will be very different to express throughout all sentient beings. And I could get that. I could understand that. It's almost like when Master was saying that we're talking about some day, some year, and some time, but to a small ant. You're talking about the time that's year, they cannot comprehend. They probably don't live beyond months, let alone understanding how many years. So maybe that's one of the reasons why the only expression for time was at one time. And there was another story about the location, the city of the House of Kings. I think that the story was very convoluted. I think the story was very complicated and it's very weird. But that's not the whole point. The whole point is the story tells us that there are many kinds of sentient beings, that the Dharma is spread across a spectrum of sentient beings, spectrum of worlds that is so wide that is beyond our understanding. In the story, we saw that there are all these demons, there are all these spirits, there are these lions and animals that are somehow being able to communicate with people. So it's beyond our understanding. And I would not say that this is not possible. I would just say that this means that the Dharma is spread through all these. And we're going to talk about it later. We're going to talk about it in the next part. Okay, so most importantly, the location is very important. Must be suitable for spreading Dharma. In the book, Master goes on to explain how it's important that we want to spread the Dharma, and it needs to be near the people, right? Near the people, but it cannot be too close, right? Too close to the cities, too close to the business of the people. Then it's going to be very, very difficult to keep that peacefulness. So therefore, it's not going to be close by the people, but not too close, and not to be affected by the people, close enough to spread the Dharma, but just far enough for the minds to be tranquil. Location is very important. So coming back to one of the stories that I found on New York Times, and this is important, okay? And I read like this story. So if any of you know that in New York, that there is a huge issue, a huge problem with education. In fact, across the United States, there's a lot of problem with schools, with education. And one of the most important things we're going to talk about later are teachers. And the other thing is the schools. And so there's a school, elementary school, that tries to stay open for 12 hours. That means you come in the morning at 7 a.m. and the parents are free to pick you up at 7 p.m. And this is a great way, because right now there's a lot of issue with after school programs, because parents aren't able to come and pick up their kids at 3 or 4 p.m. when the school lets out. So this is a good way. And so there are many people say the idea to stay open for 12 hours seems to be working, because the most important school amenity for some parents, it's not how good your teachings are, but it's basically affordable childcare. And that's why, and I think this is also happening. I read another news that in Japan, where that the aging population, people are getting older and younger people are not, giving birth. The younger kids are they're not being born. So the entire population is getting more and older. This is happening to many countries in Asia, specifically in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and also probably Singapore too. It's an aging population, right? So in Japan, they're also doing very similar things. The school making sure that the childcare is affordable and it's nearby, and therefore it boosted the child birth rates. Amazing, because if you make it too difficult for the parents, they would just simply not have kids. And so the school says, hey, if I could do this more affordable to all of you, and there are even research that says that after school program, especially high quality ones, making sure that they stay until 7 p.m. can improve the child's attendance, academics, and other measures of well-being, including mental health. And this is very important, because we don't want the new generation of kids to be coming out with all these mental issues. And that's one of the bigger problems here that we face in the United States too. So that's a very huge need in the community. So a very important place is very important. Okay, so there was a question that was asked that on page 107, and in the book, it was said that the Buddhist practitioners must not have attachment in their minds or think that this is a spiritual training ground for me only. Tzu Chi is the only place for me only. And if there are Dharma masters elsewhere, I cannot go. I cannot listen to them. So we must not have this kind of mindset. Wherever there is Dharma, we must listen to it more. And this is what the master says. Wherever there's Dharma, we must listen to it more. And every Dharma master and every lay practitioner must gain insights from their studies. So somebody asked, are you sure? Because we were told that in Tzu Chi that we should not go to other practices. That in Tzu Chi, we should stick to Tzu Chi and we should not go to the other practices. But here on page 107 in the book, it was very clearly stated that you must not be attached to only one place, that you must listen to other Dharma masters and other lay practitioners, what they have to share. Did I catch a problem? Did I catch an issue here? Did master really say this? Does that mean that I can go to the other practice, other places? I can listen to other Dharma masters' speech? Does it mean that? So let me share with you what I think. I think that to find the best path for you and anybody, it's important to also know other options and alternatives. You should never close off the doors to the other parts. If you want to learn more, if you want to advance and make progress. However, when you are set for this certain path, it's important to also to continue the path instead of spreading your time too thin. And that also makes sense. So both of these parts make sense. So the final part is neither overly attached to the current path, nor overly attached to always looking to change. That's the key. So let me share with you this story, right? So California, they have, so the whole world is buzzing with electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles. However, 10 years ago, in California, they were trying to do something called a hydrogen fuel cell, which means it takes hydrogen gas and converts it into power, into energy. And that's what they did. So they tried to do that, right? They knew they had to reduce emission. They had to reduce the gasolines. So they had to use something new. So about more than 15 years ago, roughly, about 12 years ago, California started, I'm going to make advancement. I'm going to try hydrogen fuel cells. That's what they did. But the problem is that despite lots and lots of investments, they really find out that the battery electric vehicle is what took off. The technology took off, right? So, but they stick to one path, which is hydrogen fuel cell. And that's really, really difficult. And therefore, now they have a hybrid system where they have drivers have 3,000 hydrogen cars in California compared to 380,000 battery electric vehicles. So now the question is, do you change or do you not change? Do you want to do both paths? Do you need to have hydrogen fuel cells charging station and battery charging station at the same time? Once you know that this is what you want to do, focus on it. But before you are sure, you can take both multiple alternatives. And that's what that question really was about. Understanding what you want. But before you are set, it's always good to learn more. It's always good to know that while you're set on battery electric vehicles, you also know the options for hydrogen fuel cells. You also know the possibility of hybrids. These are all your options. Know about them. When other people are making advances, you will know maybe it's better time to shift or not to shift. But it's always important to know your options. However, when you're actually making your progress, making your action, you should stick to one. And that's what the attachment was talking about. Okay, so let me speed up. I'm running short on time. So people, that's the third part. So there are many types of different beings, people that are coming here to listen to the Buddha. And so why is this important? Because I think this is very important. It's not talking about the different types of people. This is talking about that there's so many different types of sentient beings coming to listen. That means the teachings are open to all. It's not only open to the privileged one, to the nobles, to the rich, or to the heavenly beings. No, it's open to all sentient beings, whether you're high up in the heaven or low in the hell. You are, if you can come, you are free to listen. That's what this portion is about. The Dharma and the teaching is open to all parts of the society, all sectors of the society, and all parts of the realm. Not only that, the teachings are relevant to all. It's applicable to whether you're in the heaven or whether you're in hell. Imagine one textbook, one book that's applicable to learnings for college students and kindergarten. Can you do that? You can't. But that's what the Buddha's teachings are. It's open to all the parts of the realm and all the people. Because why? Because even though they have different capacities, capabilities, backgrounds, etc., they all have similar issues that need to be addressed by this teaching. All across all the different types of living beings, we all have very similar problems. And how do you address that? By this teaching. Okay, so like what? Like common problems, like air pollution, unsafe air, right? So all these things, and just making sure that that the IQ Air World Air Quality Report shows that there is like 7 countries that meet the PM 2.5 guidelines, which is horrible. Okay, only 7 countries that meet the PM 2.5. That means that the concentration of PM 2.5 particle parts per million is so high that it can fuses into our bloodstream, and directly you breathe them in and it goes into your bloodstream, and it causes all these problems because it goes directly into your bloodstream. It's small enough to go into the bloodstreams and cause all these problems in your health and cause many deaths. And that's the huge problem right now. So these are common problems, just like we face common problems, just like this. So the Dharma gives us a common solution to all living beings that face these common problems. So all these I'm gonna skip over. And lastly, action. What did they do? They prostrate before the Buddha, they circumambulate, they walk in a ring around the Buddha, and there are 3 types of offering. And so I want to show you that this is what they did. All these people, all these sentient beings come before the Buddha. They prostrate, means that they're humble, and they circumambulate because it's a concentric circle. They form inside to outside, one layer builds on top of the other, making sure that all these teachings are built on top of one another. And they're built by offerings, by offering your wealth, offering your respect, and offering your conduct. And lastly, I have all these stories that I want to really share with you, but I don't think I have time. But let me just quickly go through them. What's the best school practice? Wealth, right? We talk about 3 offerings: wealth, respect, and conduct. And so this is truly what's happening. The best money, what are the best professions that the money can buy? Definitely not teaching. So you're not attracting good professionals. You're not attracting good talents to education because you're not paying them enough. This is a very true world. People don't just come to this world for charity. They need a living. If they find out that they're capable to make more money elsewhere, they will not be coming here to make money just to become teachers. And when one person thinks this way, probably 10 people think this way. Probably 100 people think this way. And when you don't make better pay, unfortunately, you don't have good teachers. And if you don't have good teachers, you're not going to have good students. So that's why wealth is important, right? Wealth is important to making sure that teachers don't stop quitting. You need to keep the teachers, and then you need to have good teachers, right? So more funding into public schools, right? Next, respect. And we see from this New York Times article, Yale students got a terrifying message that says that describing the city in Yale University, which is, I remember back in my time, it was the world's #2 school behind Stanford. Sometimes it's Princeton, sometimes behind Harvard. Sometimes it's Princeton, sometimes it's Stanford, sometimes it's Yale, but it was one of the best schools in the world. And the best school in the world, the new city that it's in, it's crime-ridden and dangerous. And it tells the students to remain on campus, avoid public transportation, and stay off the streets after 8 p.m. So there's even a flyer that tells you, welcome to Yale. And this is a survival guide for first-year student of Yale University. And this is amazing. This is truly what they're giving out to Yale students. But I mean, later on, the police said that, no, I think we got it under control. But still, this is telling you that education is not being respected. Teachers and students are not being respected. The schools are not being respected by the society. And therefore, we're not going to have a good education. Lastly, and this is really true too, conduct. Even after you're educated, you are not poised to do well in the school, in the society. And therefore, the teachers and the students, they will lose confidence. For example, in India, young Indians more likely to be jobless if they are educated. And this is just turning upside down, right? There's a if you get more education, you're going to be more likely to be jobless. And so unemployment in India is a huge issue. And so there are people saying that because the government should be thinking about growing workforce, but it is a dividend only if they're employed in good jobs. And so wealth, respect, conduct. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Okay, so and this is very true. When we're talking about offerings for the Buddha, this is also very true in the area of teaching and learning. Okay, so similarly for the Buddhist practitioners, to have a good location to learn, you need to offer wealth, you need to offer respect to the area of learning, to the teachers and to the students, and also the conduct. When you do learn, you do get positive outcomes out of it. And if you have none of that, then this teaching is not going to be able to continue. So today we cover the 4 parts of the first section of the virtues. And let me recap. So the whole picture so far is the Buddha was departing and left us his teachings. To preserve the teachings, the 4 things are very important: authenticity, continuity, adaptability, and survivability. And these all point to sustainable teachings of the Buddhist teaching. So teachings are important because they apply to all sentient beings across all spectrums of life. And we all must be humble and be willing to receive and learn. That's what the very first part tells us about. So until next time, we're going to be talking more about the next section, and I'll be cutting back on some of the contents. I realize there's so many things that I couldn't share that I wanted to share, but even though the reading was only for about less than 100 pages, but there's still many things that to go through. And I hope that through this, the dissection and the analysis, that people begin to understand that, okay, so we're not just reading the stories, we're now seeing the context and trying to make sense of what the Buddha was trying to do. The Buddha was leaving this world, and how, and thinking to try to make sure that the teaching will stay long. To make sure of that, the students, the followers, must make sure that the teaching are authentic, and there's a way to continue this teaching, and then we can change to any possible future changes in the world, and also survive, continue to survive. And the teachings are important because it's open to all, and it's applied to all. It's usable by all. All these sentient beings, all these Nagas, all these Garudas, all these things that you probably never heard before, but they're actually sentient beings from different realms. They are all going to use it and learn it. And that's why the teachings are so important, that we need to keep it and preserve it. And before we learn it, we must be humble and be willing to receive and learn this teaching. So that's the part for today. And I apologize I used up more time than I should, but let's now open for the QA for the remaining time that we have. And so if there's any issues or any questions or anything that you would like to share with me, you're more than welcome to open your microphone and share with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Joe, for once again for giving us such an insightful analysis by just reading this less than 100 pages of the Dharma sharing, and then it's truly very relatable to what currently happenings around the world, and then it's really, really very good. So right now, let's open to the floor. Anyone's from North Zone, South Zone, whoever that's online, take this opportunity to ask a very short and sweet question to our Brother Joe so that he can share with us to help us to answer your question. Thank you. Feel free to unmute. Maybe let me start with my own question. Basically, I truly, it's very, very honored to see such a very insightful sharing. And Brother Joe, seeing that you're so busy with all your whatever daily schedule that you have right now, what makes you to have the time to really do so many analysis, so many time to prepare all the slide for us? And then so why you're willing to do that for Singapore? It is yeah, basically you're so busy, and why you're willing to do so.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think I once read that a singer said that she felt very blessed that her voice is heard. And So I feel the same way. I feel very blessed and also very fortunate that that there are people willing to listen to my sharings, my thoughts after reading master's teachings. And I feel honored. I feel it is truly an honor to be able to share. And I feel very fortunate that my voice and my thoughts can be there to be heard by people. And so I try to make sure that the things, the voices, the content of what I say truly reflects what I believe. So I try to find evidence. I try to prove, and I would tell you when I don't have, when I don't believe it myself. And there are going to be times when I would contradict what was written, but I'll also try very hard to find ways to justify. And I also do my best to keep up to date with, you know, the publications that I try to read. Mostly they're all in English because I believe that right now the journalism in Chinese are a little bit just not enough, and they're not global. They don't have the global view, and so I try to subscribe to all these publications, even though they're very leaning toward West. But that's what you get, right? That's what you get. I don't understand Arabics, so I cannot read their content online. But I think that it does give us a very bigger picture. I try to see this, and when I see a certain news, I would think about, well, what is this news trying to tell us? You know, it tells us a certain idea and how it relates to our lives, and then you realize that this is actually very much related to the sutra itself. And so that's how I began to read the sutra as well. You don't just read what the book tells you. You don't read what the book tells you. You try to read between the lines. Why is the book telling you this? And go from there. And that's why I always ask myself, why did the book ask you this? Why did the book try to tell you this? There must be a reason. So whether it's, you know, analyzing it to be continuity or survivability or adaptability, all these are trying to figure out why did Ananda ask these 4 questions? And there must be a reason. And the reason isn't just those 4 questions. The reason is to perpetuate, to continue this teaching. This is what must be done. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always difficult to find questions to ask or just a comment. This is always a very difficult time.
And I definitely learned one part very important, which is the last section, that we all must be humble and willing to receive and learn. Even for myself, when I read the story or read the news, I just read the headlines basically, and then I'll just treat it as what happens, who is involving, and then and what, how, and when, and that's it. To me, I just read just maybe by the first line of it, without really put too much of thoughts into it, and what's the message that it carries, and what's the lesson that we can learn from it. Yeah, there's something that I have to learn. Yeah. So anyone else would like to ask questions?
Hello, Brother Joe. Yeah, very grateful for your sharing today. Again, you have offered us a very different perspectives to the teachings of the Buddha as well as the teachings of Master. Okay, and also grateful to that you have summarized for us the whole picture, you know, based on this section. So looking at these 4 points, I can't help but to draw parallel to what our Tzu Chi Foundation is also going through. Because Master is not going to be with us forever. So she's going to leave us with her teachings. And we need to preserve the teachings, the authenticity, the continuity, adaptability, and sustainability, or the survivability of the Master's Dharma. And these teachings are important because they apply to all of us across all over the world, regardless of our backgrounds. And we must be humble and willing to receive and learn. So my question here is that how does Tzu Chi ensure that the teachings are, fulfill the authenticity, the continuity, and so that the future generations are still able to hear the true teachings. And also, how do we adapt to the current evolving, the big changes that's happening in the world, and how do we ensure that it is survivable in this modern era of the Dharma degeneration?
This is a very, very good question. And when I was doing this, I was exactly thinking about, the parallel with Tzu Chi as well. And I think one of the biggest things that is different that we have here in the year 2024 and 500 BC, the time of the Buddha, the biggest difference right now, and I'm not talking about the technology because the change is big, but it's not that big. The biggest difference between the time of the Buddha and the time of Tzu Chi now and here is what we do. Because back then, the time of the Buddha, there was only the teachings. But here, now, we have the teachings and we have the practice. The practice itself allows us to sustain, allows us to, there's an actual body where you're able to find and continue this form. You're afraid to lose the teaching, but you actually can continue because there's an actual charity or the mission of medicine, all these 4 missions and all the footsteps that we can do. So it's already very difficult. It's already very different from 2,500 years ago or 500 BC. So I think that one of the most important things is because we have something that's more tangible, now we're able to think that how do I continue this? How do I continue charity without losing the teachings from the master? How do I make sure that I continue the authenticity of charity, which is, are you truly helping people? Are you doing the best you can to bring them joy or bring them Dharma joy or bring them, helping them by making them help other people? That's the continuity and the authenticity of the teaching. Because back in the time of the Buddha, there's only the words, the teaching itself. So it's very difficult to find out what is authentic and what is not. But at least now we have a form. We have done something called the charity or something that we want to do, the humanistic charity that we should do. And so adaptability obviously will be using the different approaches and different, according to the world, what's the best practice to bring charity or bring joy to those that are suffering. So I think that that's a very, very big difference. And that's why Master always says that what the Buddha wanted to do during the time of 500 BC, we're now able to do now. We're able to bring the ideals to actually something concrete, what we call charity or humanistic loving or loving kindness, if you will, compassion, serving. All of this becomes something that we are doing today. So if you remember, Master talks about being the one that digs up the well, that the hospital itself, even without Master with us, the hospital will still be saving people. So we need to make sure we continue the practice. At the same time, we have to make sure that remembering how the Master led us and how the Master overcome all these difficulties, that these are the ideals and the concepts that the Master gave us. And then we have the most important thing is we have that form, a concrete form with us that we didn't have at the time of 500 BC. So I think that's a very big difference. Now, does that mean that it will be easier to make sure that all the teachings continue on? No, it's not. It doesn't mean it's easier, but at least we have something that we can grab onto, and we can make sure that if there's any charity needs, that we're able to very quickly mobilize, and we're very quickly able to continue all these the action of loving kindness. So I think we are much ahead. It doesn't mean it's easier, but it means that we're much ahead. But still, there's a lot of work ahead to make sure that all the teachings remain as is. And that still requires all the people to pass on the teachings as well.
Hi, Brother Huang. My name is Yongyu from North Zone. So the question I wanted to ask is because just now you have shared the example on you can actually hear a lot of sutras, but you can only follow one path. So I wanted to ask, what would be the correct path and the 真实法 that for you to follow, despite hearing many of the sutras in Buddhism?
Okay, this is a very good question, and I think that the way that I like to see this is 真实法 or the true teachings. I think is very different to all of us. What fits me might not fit you. So once you find this is what you like, or once you find that this is workable for you, keep it. But while learning from others, I don't object to reading other material from other Dharma masters. But when I read those, I take what I can, but it's not like I'm going to switch my track to the other track. But the most important part is, did you find what you're looking for? And if you're still looking, then you should open your minds to all. But if you're done looking, then you should not be looking with the intent to change. And let me give you an example. And I think this probably will bring chuckles to a lot of you. And this is the idea of getting married. Okay, before you're getting married, before your wedding vow, you're probably looking for the right person. And maybe every time that you date a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you take something good from this person. Oh, he's rich. Or, I mean, let's use he, right? He's rich, he's tall, he's good looking. And you try to put all the good things together, and you try to form what is the best suitable for you, right? You want him to be a teacher, or you want to be kind, you want him to be making good money, right? That's all the things you're looking for, right? And then you find someone who fits 80% of all the criteria. I don't want to say 100%. If it's 100%, then you're truly blessed. But usually we're not. So you find someone which is about 70%, 80%, which is pretty good already, right? And then you're married. You're married, you have this wedding matrimony, and you have the vow binding you two. So please stop looking like, oh, that person is pretty good too, and I'll probably consider this one. The moment you do that, then you're gonna have a huge trouble, right? Because it's not that you can't change. I mean, people are getting divorced all the time, and I don't, it's probably not gonna happen to me because I'm not even married, and I'm not looking to get married. But the whole point is that if you are still looking, the sky is open. Figure out what you're looking for, what you need, what best suits you. That's the true teaching. There's so many teachings out there, and there's so many religions out there, even though they all point to great love. But I still believe that, I really believe that not one single religion fits everybody. It doesn't work that way. And that's why we have to find out what fits us. And once you figure this out, it takes you to work hard for it. So that's when I know, oh, this is good. This is what I want. And so you begin to work towards it. Like, for example, the battery electric vehicles, you continue to work on it. And then you slowly let down this hydrogen fuel cell. That's slowly letting go, because right now it's just too expensive. It's not workable. However, you always keep an open mind. And I don't mean for all of you that are married, I don't mean to keep an open mind. That's probably not a good thing to do. But you probably, for the technology, you always keep an open mind. And maybe that's going to be a solution, maybe 10 years, 20 years down the road. Maybe that's going to be more mature and it's going to be possible. Okay, so I think this is also the case with Dharma as well. Because we're changing too, right? When we're young, this is what we do. Now we're mature, we're in the 40s, this is what we do. You're in the 20s, you're in the 30s, you're in the 40s, you're in the 50s, in the 60s. We all have different points of view. So always keep an open mind, but once you're set, you want to work harder and dig deeper. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
Hi, Sister Clara, do you have a question? Are we seeing that you're unmuted? Sorry. So, Brother Joel, do you think that Buddhism or is somewhat a very democratic kind of way of teachings?
I did try to mention that, and these are all new findings. When I was reading this again, I realized that, you know, you always feel that how could the Buddha say that when there are unruly Sangha members, they just ignore them? How could anybody, a person with so much authority as the main teacher of this entire order, telling you that if he doesn't accept my teaching, just ignore them, let them be compassionate. And then you realize that because against the backdrop of the society, there were slaves, there were caste systems, people were forced to do things that they don't want. And so the Buddha was coming out with this new idea, coming out with this new, better system where it's not based on force. It's not telling you that you should do this and you should not do that. And if you don't, get out. The Buddha doesn't do this anymore. Doesn't do this. And it becomes a very open to all. And I think this is a new finding for me, that that's what the Buddha was trying to sought after. Why? Because during that time, the society was completely the opposite. And so he wanted to make sure that maybe there is a different way we can have people come together and learn something. And you do this by practicing something new. And that was the idea. So I think that's what I meant. But is it democratic? I don't think it's democratic. Democratic means that you have a democracy where people, you know, all get to choose. Now, the teaching doesn't mean that you vote and whoever gets more votes wins that teaching. It doesn't work that way. If Sariputra gets 500 people on his side and there's only Buddha on the other side, let me tell you, it's still the Buddha that wins. So it's not democratic, but it's liberty. It's freedom. It's free for you to explore. It's free for you to understand and learn. There isn't going to be one thing that says you can't do this, you can't do that. So other than precepts. So I hope that this is something new. It's not democratic, but it's liberty. There's freedom. I mean, can you imagine, you know, in a school, in a classroom, where the learning, the teachings, like, you know, when is the American Revolution? You can't have, you know, more students voting on 1996 and then you have the true answer 1776. That's wrong. You can't do that. And that's what the Buddha was standing on the part of the true teaching. And that's not democratic. You know, that's very authoritative. But when it talks about people not accepting, you are free to choose. You have the liberty to choose. And I hope that you choose what I teach you. But if you don't, I understand. Imagine that. I find it very difficult to believe that. But I think that was the environment that the Buddha was trying. So all these things about, you know, the 4 questions and all these things about all these sentient beings, you know, it goes through Tianlong Babu, all these, you know, and all the bodhisattvas and all these. I think it's telling you the Buddha's vision of this good society is that all these different types of people, whether you are the elders, whether you are men and women of the country, whether you are king and prince and all these people, or lowly farmers, merchants, military, you know, soldiers, you're all free to learn this. And this will help you and this will make your life different. Welcome to learn. And I think this is something that at 500 BC, I think that's very, very difficult, very, very different. You know, imagine a school that's open to everybody. You don't have that. You know, you don't have school opening to different type of caste. You don't even have school open to pigs and dogs. You don't, right? But Buddha's teaching opens to all, even the Nagas, right? The animal realms, hell realm, right? All the hungry ghosts. Imagine that. And I think that's the ideal utopia for Buddha, where the teaching is open to all and you're free to learn. If you don't accept, I'm going to use my love and compassion so that you can learn. But if you don't, stay here. Maybe one day you'll find out that this is what you want to learn. Can you understand that? There's so much love involved here. And we get that from the first part. But sometimes we don't get that because we read through it and then we'll know, oh yeah, the 4 questions. Oh yeah, all these are the people that are coming to listen to the Dharma. And then we miss that. We miss that ideal. That's, you read between the lines and you get it. You go, oh wow, that's the utopia. That's the world that the Buddha envisioned. And we're not there yet. We're not there. Thank you.
Yeah. I think.
Ask one question.
Oh, sure. Yes, it's the last question.
Brother Joe, yes, I heard that. But do you think that is a bit unrealistic? The utopia that
I think right now, given all the things that we have, it's unrealistic because I can't even communicate with dogs and pigs and cats. So I think having a school or having a teaching for them to listen to, I think it's unrealistic. But who knows? Maybe they do understand. I don't know. But I do think that it's not wrong to dream. It's not wrong to have an aim high, right? Aim for something that you believe in. And that's an ideal. Aim for just like master, right? The 3 vows every year, every moment, right? Purify. How do you purify? How do you 净化人心? How do you purify everybody's mind? When we have all these thoughts, evil thoughts coming out, malevolent, bad thoughts, malevolent thoughts all the time. So how do you do that? It's hard, but master is aiming high and trying to shoot for that. So it's unrealistic because from our point of view. But I think if you're standing at the height of the Buddha, probably it's possible. And if you're standing at the height of master, I think it's doable. Maybe not in our lifetime. I mean, imagine, 2,500 years ago. Could you imagine that we are doing this sharing right now? You probably can't. So maybe another 2,000 years, that would be very possible. Who knows? But I do believe that it's unrealistic now, practically. But I believe in this dream. I believe.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
So, if there is no more question from the floor, then maybe we can let our brother Joe to go for his maybe another schedule of his, another meeting perhaps with the US.
Next month. Next session.
So for the next sessions for the next month would be, do we want to schedule it right now or?
It's the
Just
same
Friday. Okay. So beyond just to Brother Joe, you're gonna give us the chapter next through the WhatsApp, right? Later on.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So next month will be on the 10th of May for those who was online and also on the North and South zone side. 10th of May, same timing. It's a Friday. So see?
Yeah, we still carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that I thought that we're going to have our U4.
No, the rehearsal is on Saturday.
Okay, so fine.
How about Brother Joe?
Oh, yeah, Brother Joe, are you okay? Because on the 10th of May is on Friday, but we are very close to the U4.
So,
I'm okay. Because
Oh.
the practice, usually the rehearsal happens on Saturdays.
Okay.
And Fridays are usually okay, right?
Okay.
But as you guys, I know you guys are going to be very busy as well. So
You're okay, we're definitely okay.
okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Joe.
Thank you all.
For your time and everything. Thank you for giving the sharing. See you again next time. Yeah.
the rest,
The rest of the volunteers, can you stay back? Or do you want to?
we can have your own sharing.
Oh yeah, you can have your own sharing discussion within your own zones. Yeah, that's all. And then for those online individually, you can drop off if you want to. Yeah.
Okay, there's a request for the recording, right? Okay, this may take a while, okay, because we have to download it and then convert it into the YouTube format. So we'll try to make it available for everyone to rewatch. But importantly is to listen again and try to catch and try to, like what Brother Joe said, to read between the lines. So when we read the books, we don't just read the words, not just literally, but we should read between the lines. What is the spirit behind? What's the ideals behind? Okay, and what was the context at that time? Because we cannot just take things literally. 2,000 over years ago and now is totally different. So we have to so when we rewatch it again, we should be having we try to catch what Brother Joe had taught us tonight, and we try to recapture that and to see if that really makes sense or not to us, to our own self. So importantly is what we have learned, what we have gained, what we have benefited, and how do we apply it, and how can we benefit others. So this should be the direction and the train of thoughts, the framework that when we're doing this Dharma study and this book study. So importantly, Brother Joe has shown us that there are many ways of looking at the same thing, but what is the right way? The right way for us, the right way that Masters has shown us, and what Master is leading all of us towards to work on. So importantly, is still the coming back to ourselves and the conduct that we do on our daily life basis. So yeah, so just be a little bit patient. I try to convert it into YouTube so that more people could listen in, and also try to invite your friends, your fellow volunteers, and share with them. Tell them, oh, what have you learned this time round? Tonight's session, what have you learned? Oh, you learn about the teachers in the schools, the US schools. These teachers are all leaving. Why? And then you learn about the drones, what happened to all these drones that is being built in US. So yeah, and the four things, the four questions and the three meanings of the Venerable Ananda's 4 questions. So these are the things that maybe could spark some interest in our fellow volunteers or our other Buddhist Dharma practitioners, and invite them to come and join us in every session. Because every session I'm sure I have benefited, and I'm sure most of us here were also benefited in one way or another. So why not share these benefits with our friends? So we hope that more can come in, more can listen, physically or online, it doesn't matter. As importantly is we have to be there, we have to be present, we have to be mindful when we are listening or watching this. Okay, so very grateful to everyone for coming tonight. Then for North Zone, South Zone, you may continue with your own offline discussions. And so do we want to make 3 bows to the Buddha? Okay, so let's close today's session by making 3 bows.
Okay, brothers and sisters, please rise. Let's put our palms together and pay homage to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Okay, thank you everyone. We still have a safe journey back home. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Continue with our own. We can continue here offline if you all can stay back for another 5-10 minutes.
Sure.